Miserable. It was so painful to watch. Exciting for Brady in the past, but that just hurt. That just.
Put on history.
How does that happen?
Brayton. They look like a team that could mount that tumble in the fourth quarter.
Well, at one point in time, he said the odds of the Falcons winning the Super Bowl was 96%. 96. How do you lose a game? You've got a 96% shot at winning the Super Bowl.
Who do you believe on that?
When they backed up from their 20, from their past 25, that 13 yard sack Brady and then that 10-yard penalty. I said, this is not good.
We got the music for it till we get started.
More and more every day.
Too quiet in here. Y'all talk
More and more every day.
Actually, we're ready to start in a few seconds. Call the Walton County Tourist Development Council meeting to order. Couple notes, we want to make sure everybody turns your phones off or puts them on silent, please. If you would stand for the invocation of the pledge. There it is. Our Heavenly Father, we ask for your guidance today for this board as we work together with our community, businesses, and tourists to accomplish our goals for the benefit of all. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll have a roll call. First of all, I'd like to welcome our new board members. Matt Hagan, Chief Financial Officer of the Howard Group. Matt.
Thank you.
Mark Hogan, Senior Vice President, General Manager of Sandestin Beach and Golf Resort.
Thank you.
And Richard Belden, owner of the Bar of South Walton, Inc. Richard, thank you. Welcome, you guys. All right, so we got three of them right there that are here. Brian Christensen. Here. Pam Avery. Jim Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson. Here. Peter Brumeyer. And Tim Norris. We have a four. All right, let's see. Any public comments on the agenda? Anybody want to make any comments? Okay, let's move on. We've got the approval of the minutes. Any questions, input? Okay. Mr. Bowman. Good question. Any others? We have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Financial report.
Good morning, Board. I'm Jason Cutshaw, Director of Administration, and welcome to the new members of the Board. It's going to be a pleasure serving with you. This is our Financial report, the first slide that you see here is a breakdown of our penny structure. It has year-to-date, the expenditures. You see the month of December, and adjacent to it, and I know it's kind of small and hard to see, but the annual, our highest percentage so far, even though we're 25% into the year, is a 10% increase, or not increase, but a 10% usage so far. Most of that is memberships, things that we pay at the beginning of the year, equipment and machinery, because we got to go ahead and order that equipment that we need now that we're going to need through the year, and maintenance on those items. And then next sheet that you see is our reserve revenue report. It should be near the last page. The reason why you've got the handouts is because the updated numbers were just updated recently, so I want to make sure you guys had the latest and greatest once it got official. This shows our reserve report and revenue by calculations. It also shows our reserve account balances down at the bottom, what we've got in each penny, and our balance at the end. It shows also on the right-hand side any visitor sales that we've had so far these past few months. This is it's kind of an overview layout, year-to-date, month-to-month that shows so far. We're in our third month of the year, and you can see we've got a 13% increase in our TDT tax collection over last year's increase. And the total collectively together is 17.28. So if we keep trending on that band, then it's predicting a relatively good year. Hopefully January and February will have pretty good numbers. But last year, almost every month was an increase, and so if we can keep that trend going forward, I think it'll be a good sign for sure. Yes, sir.
What do you contribute October to that 2394?
I know, well, my prediction, or when I used to manage Topsail State Park, and I know during that time period when we had the oil spill, unfortunately, I saw this, of course, a slowdown during that time period, but in October, it was almost like everything got quiet, media got quiet, so people came here. We had a huge increase, so big that at the park I got audited by the IG's office. Why did you have such an increase in that year in October? And I went back and I looked, I said, you know what, that's when media got quiet, people came to the beach, and they realized October is a great time to be here. So I think it's progressively just, whether people put that on their calendar, like this is the time we want to be here, is September, October, November, and so we see that increase, but October was a big increase over the year prior to.
And I think, I don't have the numbers directly, but I believe that the fall break schedule
Yes.
switched, fell back into October this year. And so we had a much larger fall break in October than we did last year.
You had a lot of the East Coast that was closed too due to the storm.
Yeah, that's true.
So a lot of people came. It was a really good
So you
first
had
quarter.
three big factors that maybe came into play. And I know a lot of the schools in Tennessee, Nashville area went to year-round, so they got a bigger fall break as well during that time period. So good point. Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Morning, Mr. Chair, council members. We have a few things we need to take care of this morning. We need to designate a treasurer, a secretary, and then some committee seats. So, Mr. Chair, if you want to address the treasurer and secretary, and then I can address the council seats if you would like.
Okay, I first will start out with the treasurer. Do we have any nominations for treasurer? We got a CFO on here. Sounds pretty good to me. You mind being treasurer?
I don't mind. I'd like to maybe talk to Jay and yourself, find out what the position, what the real responsibilities are, but no, I'd be happy to serve in that capacity.
It's not too hard.
Okay.
I'd be happy to sit down with you, Mr. Hagan, and we can discuss it.
Sure, very good.
I'll nominate Matt.
I'll third.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the board.
All right, so next we have secretary. Have anybody would like to be secretary, or do we have any nominations? Come on, you guys.
It's reviewing our meeting minutes and approving those, and then we move those forward after the executive committee, the secretary looks at them. That's all it entails. Yes, sir.
I'll nominate Richard.
Second.
We have a second?
Zip my lip.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Thank you, Richard, you're welcome.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have committee seats.
Yeah, and I'll just give you a rundown. Basically, at this point, the executive committee, the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary do not serve on our committees because they obviously have other tasks that they handle for the council. So right now, I'll just run through a list of who's on what committee, and then we can kind of decide where those vacancies are and how we want to fill those. So right now, we have Beach Management Committee. We have Brian Christensen on that committee. We have Destination Improvement Committees. We had Kurt Tape on that committee, so that's where one vacancy is. We have our Marketing and Media, and that's where Jim Richard serves. Then we have our North Walton Events Committee, which currently we do not have a council member on that committee, so we need one on that committee. And then the South Walton Events Committee, we have Pam Avery on that. So the need is for Destination Improvements and North Walton Events.
Okay.
I want to make sure you're not.
There's the button, yeah, because.
Jay, at one time.
How about now?
Test.
A couple of years back, there was like a CEO forum, and I think Mark and I had served on that, and that kind of went by way of the dodo. Is that coming back or not?
I do want to bring that back. I think it's really good effort to make connections with the bed tax collectors. But I have thought about that, and I have some concerns because we have such great bed tax collectors on our council. With that, it is not in the sunshine. Those meetings are not. So I think it might present a problem if you were to be there, and then perhaps Mr. Hodgman would be there, or Mr. Velman, or even perhaps Mr. Hagan. So I'm just not sure. Maybe I might defer to the council to address that issue.
That's one of the big reasons that it ultimately was phased out, as we started having members of the TDC who were also part of that. Now, certainly, the CEO forum, as something the executive director can engage in with groups of bed tax collectors, their CEOs, their executives, is something that's permissible. The problem is, if he's using it as an advisory committee or the equivalent of any of our other committees, it then becomes part of Sunshine. We saw a lot of pushback of people not really wanting to take that step or become Sunshine meetings or have those meetings public, and that can be understandable with businessmen, as you all know and have gone through this trainings here of what Sunshine entails. But as it relates to anybody who would be on this council, if you were then appearing at that meeting with Jay, because it would deal with issues that could come before the TDC, it is my opinion that would be a Sunshine issue. We would have to notice it, it would have to be open to the public, and we would have to keep minutes. So that's one of the reasons we phased that out. We have looked, and I worked with Jay's predecessor, Mr. Bagby, to look at a couple different options of what he can do to try to keep some similar practice or meeting session in place, and we're still working on that. But as far as the actual CEO committee, the way it was structured presented problems for those, and then as those people became members of the TDC, it became all but impossible.
So anyway, kind of a long answer, but
Yeah, no, makes sense.
it's just something that obviously we're working on. I believe in it, and I think it's a great asset to the organization, but how then do we interact with you and get the information that we're looking for and the whole purpose of those meetings? So it is a little bit complicated. So once we kind of figure that out, we'll definitely be bringing that back, but as of to date, we haven't been able to figure that out just yet.
Sure. I'd like to throw my name in the hat for destinations.
The Destination Improvement.
All right, thanks, Gary. North Walton Event Committee.
I'd be pleased to volunteer accordingly.
Do that? Okay. Mark's on North Walton Event Committee, and we got him covered.
Okay, that's it. That's
Thank
everything.
you. Thanks, guys. All right.
Thanks. I'll be back up.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Jay. Next.
Morning, Chairman, council members. Brian Kellenberger, Director of Beach Operations. Appreciate your time this morning. Order of business is a request for consideration and approval to BCC for a new equipment barn at the TDC maintenance facility. We are outgrowing our current warehouse with a renovation into more office space, and we have more equipment than we started with 7 or 8 years ago. So we're asking for a 30 by 90, 18-foot eve height, three-sided pole barn, furnished install, not to exceed $25,278. Can be funded currently out of the excess budget we have in the 6400 account, which is our capital improvements account.
Nothing for a concrete pad or a level pad?
No, sir. Actually, it'll be placed on the existing asphalt apron we have on the south side of the building. There'll be a little bit of dirt work on the backs, about last 5 feet, where there's a slight change in elevation of the grade. So we'll build a small retaining wall, put in some gravel, and we'll punch right through. It's a 8x8 poles, your typical what they call a chicken truss pole barn.
How much did you say it was going to cost?
$25,278 is the estimate we have, and that's furnish and install of the pole barn and then adding the 3 sides to it.
How soon are you going to get it started?
As soon as we get approved by the BCC, we'll put it out for bid.
Okay.
Just a question about your process. Do you, on a project like this, when you undertake this, do you go out for bids? Did you get kind of 2 or 3 or 4 different companies to quote it?
The county has a fairly strict purchasing policy, so we're allowed to seek what we call conceptual estimates from possible vendors. But so what we do is we do seek a couple of different estimates based on a conceptual plan. And then once it's approved by the BCC, Central Purchasing takes it from there, and they issue a invitation to bid or request for proposal depending on the description of the project. ITB would be used for a very defined project, which this is. A RFP is for where you know what you want, but you don't exactly know all the parameters of it. So, but yeah, Central Purchasing does do that. They'll send it out. Put a time limit on it, put the ITB out, ask for a closing date, and they handle the complete purchasing process.
You feel good about the bid?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, sir. Good morning.
It's a quick question. Anybody done a drainage study? I'm just worried is there going to be water retention? You take it 2,700 square feet.
Right. Since we're putting this over a asphalt area, there won't be any change in pervious area. So we have adequate draining there at our facility.
Okay, good question. All right, we have a motion.
I make a motion, we recommend that the county accept this and move forward with it.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. All right, next.
Morning again. We have request recommendation to the BCC to approve addendum to the South Walton Fire District contract for the expansion of beach safety services. This agenda item is for a few items. One is the expansion of the season from the end of September to the end of October. The other is for a lifeguard tower at Grayton Beach. And then lastly, and much more smaller in scope than the other 2 items, is a shed for Inlet Beach for the utility vehicles that the Sheriff's Office, the South Walton Fire District uses in their lifeguard duties. So I can go over a few key items here with these, and let's see, let me find my couple items. I will start with the expansion of the season. Just with some stats, I asked South Walton Fire District to kind of prepare some numbers. October obviously is becoming more and more popular. We've had an 80% increase in bed tax collections. I mean, I won't speak to visitor count, but bed tax collections alone over the past 3 years. So that's pretty significant when you look at that. So obviously, October is becoming more and more popular. If you just look over the 3-year history, you can kind of see that. So a few things that South Walton Fire District noted was this past October, they had 14 successful water rescues, 3 medical responses, 2 lost person assisted, and they recorded over 22,000 public contacts, nearly 1,100 preventative actions, and then they provided the wheelchair service to over a dozen patrons for this past October. So I think just by kind of looking at these stats, you can kind of see that there's a need for an increase present in that October. October is really, I think, becoming more and more of a peak season than it is a shoulder season, so I think that's a good thing. I think when you look at our neighbors to both the east and west, Bay and Okaloosa counties, they have lifeguard services year-round. So I think that this is a good step moving forward, is to, expand it that 1 month, and then, we'll look at it in the next year or two and kind of see where we are and reassess it at that point. But so anyway, so that's the October season expansion. And then, any questions on that before I move on to the tower at Grayton?
So this is for the monthly cost?
Okay, so let's talk about the cost a little bit. So right now, for us to expand the season, it will be an additional $56,772 to the contract. So we'll do an addendum to our contract, which we still have 1 year left. So for this next season, we would add that and extend the season, and then we'll obviously renegotiate the whole contract next year. And you can kind of see some of those are some equipment costs in there, if you're looking at the numbers in your booklet.
That's starting today, or starting the season, March.
This would start for this
coming
next season. Yeah, so end of this season, instead of being September, it would end in October.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then the Grayton Tower. Grayton Beach is very unique. Obviously, we all know that, with cars out there, people, and right now we currently just have a rover out there. And basically, a rover is an all-terrain vehicle that's out there, and we have a guard. But it's very difficult for that guard to, view the whole beach and what's going on in the water. And so I've kind of been out there firsthand, as, Brian Kellerberger's been out there, and it's the recommendation of the South Walton Fire District, that we look at adding a tower there. So I think it's a very good thing to add to that location. And you kind of see here some of the costs. Obviously, there's some capital equipment that we wouldn't have reoccurring in future years, and that capital equipment is $13,950. So we're looking at $44,897 for personnel, that type of stuff. So it's a total of, for this year, $58,847, and then next year it would be 44. Well, I shouldn't say next year, 100%. Next year it would be most likely 44,897. But with us having to renegotiate the contract, I don't want to hold South Walton Fire District to that number. Yes, sir.
Why is there an administration cost added in here for 3% on equipment, but not on personnel costs for the shed?
What are you?
13.
Equipment and operating costs, they've got an administrative fee in there for 3%. Hey, what's that for, and why is it not on the other one?
You know what? That's a good question, and I'm going to defer that to David Vaughn. David, would you mind addressing that?
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. State your name,
David Vaughn,
Okay.
South Walton Fire District, Beach Safety.
Thank
I would like to note that I probably should have, when I created this spreadsheet, made that admin its own separate. We've got personnel costs, equipment costs, and admin should have been an underlined and bolded. And that's just for the overhead costs that we incur with our CFO, our front office personnel, and doing the hiring, and it's the back end costs. And I probably should have just made that a bold. I apologize for the Scrivener's error on that.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Any other questions? As we see on our numbers for this year, October is very, very busy, and we see that the school systems are changing up a little bit on their fall, what do you call it, vacation time or breaks, and it seems kind of makes sense to have a guard for that time of the year anyway, because we are growing.
I think it does. And then, we do need to take into account, our neighboring counties and what they do. I mean, they are some competition to us, and if they're offering services that we are not, I think it's just something that we need to be aware of and make sure that we are taking care of our guests in the best way that we possibly can.
Can I ask you, how many other towers do we have, and do we keep any data on how busy certain public areas are? Like, would Grayton be amongst one of the busiest?
It is. Actually, David, would you mind coming up and addressing some of that for the council?
There's a zoo out there.
Would you mind restating the question for me?
I guess the question related to how many other areas that necessitate having a tower, and then also, do we keep data on how busy certain beach access areas are versus others, and is Grayton considered one of the busier ones?
I'll answer the last first. Grayton, yes, has become a very busy spot. We have had a lot of, between medicals and water rescues, we have seen an increased activity level there. It's an area we've identified since as early as 2009, 2010, and it's always been a matter of, in the budget negotiations, figuring out where the money would be best placed. We then ended up on the west side over near the Whale's Tail area, at the beach house area. So that's just been kind of kicked down the road. And so we addressed it in this last contract to put the rover there as kind of an experimental phase. And so this first year we had the rover there, and we figured out, yes, we were right, this is an area of high need. To your first question, we have every regional beach access, Inlet, Bramble Grove, Van Ness Butler, Blue Mountain, Gulfview Heights, Ed Walleen, Dune Allen, and Pompano Joe's, with the one west side stopgap between Pompano Joe's and the Sandestin area. So we do know that I wouldn't say they're equal. Some are busier than others. Of course, Pompano Joe's, being on the west side of the county, is probably one of the busiest. And we've seen fluctuations between others. Blue Mountain is small, and it's compact in the parking there. So they each have their distinct personalities, but some are definitely busier than others. And we do keep statistics on all of them.
Matt, I think the other thing that you need to keep in mind for Grayton Beach is that it's one of the, I think it's the only place where you can put a vehicle on a beach.
Right.
And so now you've got the mix between, people walking and so having a tower there would certainly help that situation.
No, I agree.
We should also note that it's been approved for restroom facilities and improvements on Grayton Beach. And does this provide any oversight or a deterrent from vandalism or anything of that nature for the facilities?
Well, the facilities, we're still working on that. We have to go through approval process with DEP, and we're in the process of doing that. So I'm not sure timeline of when that's going to happen officially, as far as when we start on that. And that was an issue when we were taking the whole putting a lifeguard there, is where do they use the restroom facilities? And so we have talked to Grayton State Park about our lifeguards being able to use their facilities. So that was an agreement that we came to with Matt over there, the park manager.
All right. Excellent. Any other questions?
Do we know where we are with DEP permitting on the facilities?
Brian, do you want to address that with Grayton Beach, DEP, with the restroom facilities? Where are we on that?
Yeah.
When we started the restroom project a year and a half ago, they had some concerns about the number of complaints they were receiving about vendors on the beach. They asked us to resolve those issues first. So I sent them the data that we had in the new vendor zones that we established in 2015. They seemed satisfied with that, but they wanted to wait a year to see if they got any more complaints. And so I'll be back in touch with them this year to restart that process. It will require a land management plan revision. Our last land management plan was done in 2012. We have to do it every 10 years. And so that'll be an approval process by FDEP. But I wouldn't expect bathrooms to be able to be approved by the land management plan and then designed and permitted to be able to be put in place this year. Due to the new Choctawhatchee Beach Mouse domain situation we have, that increases the permit review time, and Grayton Beach is actually a Choctawhatchee Beach Mouse critical habitat.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. The only other question I've got is that, and I don't have I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was called the Emergency Bill, Personnel Bill Act or whatever, but Matt Gaetz was proposing a portion of the TDT funds go to emergency personnel, whatever that bill was called, wouldn't that pay for this or in their budget, or how does that tie into this?
I think it's, Clay.
Let me address that. We have funded the lifeguard services that we provide under South Walton Fire District's contract well prior to that change in legislation. The BCC has previously entered a legislative finding years back that lifeguards in our beach safety program was a service that we directly promote to tourists here, and therefore it falls under a separate catch-all provision dealing with the expenditure of funds that brought it outside of the prohibition that other people had fallen under for provision of public safety services. The lifeguard services we provide have always been part of an overall beach safety program. We were one, going back historically, some of the council members will remember, I know Tim was here back when that started, we were one of the first counties that really adopted and promoted a true beach safety program beyond just the flag system. We put it in our advertising, we put it on all our books, we distributed it to bed tax collectors. So because of that, the BCC made a legislative finding years ago that said that lifeguards, as part of this, were part of a service that was marketed and promoted to tourists for the purpose of attracting tourists. And that fell under the legislative finding exemptions that we can use under the Attorney General. It has been our position that with the change in the legislation, that as long as we are still operating under our prior finding, we would not be restricted under that specific finding. However, that may be a separate bucket that we may have to use for public safety services such as law enforcement. So we really treat those as two separate items in the way we use those functions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Clay. Yeah, no. Any other questions? All right, we have a motion.
I'm pleased to motion that this board and the Board of County Commissioners approve the beach safety services expansion proposal as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Chair, I just want to put on note that I'd recuse myself because of me being on the South Walton Fire Board.
All right.
Your recusal is not actually necessary. You're on the Fire District Board. You are not actually an employee. You don't receive compensation, and therefore it would not benefit you. The fact that your seat derives from your position there, you are fine. So we won't actually need you to fill out a recusal form, and you wouldn't fall into the voting conflict section.
Aye.
You're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Clay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Goldberg.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jeff Goldberg, Emergency Management Director for the record. Last month when I came and we talked about the the survey that we did on Hurricane Hermine, one of the things, or Tropical Storm Hermine, it kind of changed. One of the things that I mentioned was the notification system that we were in the process of pulling together. This is it, Alert Walton. A little bit about it. It's a statewide initiative under Alert Florida. $12 million from the statewide catastrophic trust fund was allocated for this system statewide. So any county within the state of Florida, as well as their municipalities, constitutional officers and folks like that, can sign into this system or sign onto this system to do emergency actually all types of notifications, and I'll get into that in a minute. The catastrophic trust fund is that insurance surcharge on your homeowner's insurance. And it's generally used for basically, like it says, catastrophic incidents. But the legislature, working with Florida Division of Emergency Management, decided we needed to have a statewide notification system. There are a lot of counties within the state that have no way to notify the public. So that's why this initiative started. It does not cost anything to any of the counties. In fact, it could potentially save Walton County up to or more than $60,000 a year. It's got three components: managed lists, which is, for example, our employees, the Emergency Operations Center folks. One of the things that we've been discussing with TDC is potentially how that can be used in their operations to manage some of the notification lists that they have. There's a geographic notification, white and yellow page data, as well as 911 data. And 2 weeks ago, we did a statewide test of the system, a countywide test of the system. We went ahead and we hit all of the county employees. we hit the registration or the opt-in registration piece, and then we called every white landline phone that's listed in the white and yellow pages. We did that, which is 28,000 phones, which we did not do the 911 data because obviously we want to save that for emergencies, but we wanted to kind of push the system a little bit to see how it worked. And it worked fantastic. We had no complaints, no hiccups, no problems with it. And then there's the registration and the keyword opt-in piece. Alert Walton is the brand that we're using to kind of promote the product, where folks can actually opt into the system and get National Weather Service notifications directly to their phones, to their email, and I'm going to go through a little bit on how that gets put together. Then there's the keyword opt-in, which is similar to what we're using for the beach flags and beach safety program, which is something that we can actually offer through this system as well. And once I get through with the couple of slides, I'm going to pull up and kind of show what we have in there. We are the account administrator in emergency management, but we have a number of agencies that are looking to sign into the system or sign on to the system under us, which is the TDC, the Sheriff's Office. Their communications folks are meeting today to discuss using this as opposed to the system that they're paying for. South Walton Fire District, we're meeting with them to talk about that. In fact, some of their folks went through the training, some TDC folks went through the training, Public Works. One of the issues that we have discussed with Public Works on is when they close down a road, 38 for example, and some people from the public say, well, I didn't know that we were shutting the road down. They're going to have access to the system where they can do a geographic-based notification to the people in that area. So what they do is they go into a map, they draw a polygon, and they send a pre-recorded message to every white and yellow page registered phone in that area as another means of notifying the public when there are road closures. So the program actually, actually the school district is looking at it as well. Again, these are systems that some of these agencies are currently paying for that under the Alert Florida and Alert Walton umbrella, they're not going to have to pay for anymore. And the flexibility of this system is as such that we can actually do social media posting and social media notification as well. So if we send something out to the public, for example, we use it for some of our cold weather sheltering and our media releases. When we send something out to a media release for cold weather sheltering, it automatically gets posted to Facebook and Twitter. So we have that ability as well. And again, like I said, $50,000 to $60,000 a year we can save the Walton County folks. It's a little difficult to see, but this is the opt-in piece. So if you log into alertwalton.org, there's a screen that has there's a login screen that comes up. There's a sign up link. You click the sign up link, and then you would go ahead and you would pick a location, home, and then put your home address. You can do work, and you can put your work address, your kids' schools, things like that. So any of the National Weather Service notifications that watches and warnings that affect that area, you'll get a notification for. And so you go through, and then what it'll do is once you put the address in, a map will show up because, as we know, sometimes it doesn't geocode right, and you can actually drag that dot to where the physical location is. If it shows up and it's correct, you just click the radial button, click OK, and it'll go ahead and log that address. There's a number of different weather alert subscriptions that you can sign into. We've got flooding, non-precipitation like excessive heat and cold, tropical weathers, and severe weather. Now, there are certain ones that are defaulted, which, whether you want them or not, you're going to get them. Tornado warnings. Tornado warnings, you will get notification 24/7. There's a spot on there that says basically you don't want to be contacted within a certain hours, usually 11 to 7. You can click that, and every other notification will get stopped with the exception of tornado warnings. So you can go in there and you can look for excessive cold. You can click severe thunderstorm. My suggestion is don't click severe thunderstorm because, as we know, during the summertime, we get those every hour for all day long. So that's just kind of my thing, but we do put the option in there. And once you decide what you want, you can go back in and edit it as well. That's the public opt-in portal. I just want to pull up the admin piece real quick. This is what the admin screen looks for, and these are the different accounts that we have access to. So I'm going to go into the Alert Walton. I just want to pull up the keywords. So we go in and we want to do a notification. We click New Notification, and then there's all the different information that we have to plug in. Now, Nixle Channels is your keyword opt-ins. So we have already preloaded certain keywords. Beach flag, beach safety. We're also looking at doing a keyword opt-in for traffic alerts. So basically, it's similar to the system it is now. So what they would need to do is just text flag to 888-777, and we can push those notifications out through there. Same thing with traffic alerts to 888-777. We haven't actually started using these yet because we're still discussing how we want to use certain things. But that's kind of the keyword opt-in. One of the things that we discussed with our meeting with the TDC folks is special events. You can have a keyword that says special events. And so when there's the 38th singer-songwriter thing, where there's the marathons, any of the things that we want to promote, that can be something that can get pushed so it can be used as a marketing tool as well. And under the contract with Everbridge, Everbridge is the corporation that put this together, under the state contract, they don't care what we use it for. In fact, what they're telling us is use it for whatever you want to use it for, because the more we use it, the more comfortable we'll be able to use when we have a disaster. One of the other things about this is there's redundant servers around the world, so if we go down and we can't send a notification, we can contact Everbridge and they'll push it for us. And they did a lot of that during Hurricane Matthew. They actually did a lot of pushing for counties because some county EOCs lost connectivity and there was no way to push the information. So through the state EOC and through Everbridge, they pushed the information for us. So there's some backup capability there as well. Okay. Yeah.
Who would forest fire come in there?
We could do and again, working with Forest Service and the fire districts, we can do a keyword for prescribed burns. So anybody that wants to know about prescribed burns that are going on, when we get the information, we can go ahead and push it. As far as if there is like the fire on 98, what we could actually do is we could draw the polygon around an area to warn folks in that area that there's a wildfire going on, that they may need to shelter in place, they may need to evacuate. It affected 98. There was a road closure. We could send it that through the traffic alert notification. There's a lot of flexibility in this, and this, in my opinion, is going to help with some of the communications folks with the med tax collectors, getting them into the system, working with TDC management, and seeing how we can go ahead and pull this together for you folks, so when we do have an incident, we can go ahead and push it out to you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
What's the cost associated with their service?
Nothing, zero. We don't pay for anything in the county. It's under the state contract. Right now, it's a 5-year contract. They're anticipating, obviously, for it to be renewed, but the design of the system was $12 million, as well as the $12 million for the design and maintenance of the system, and basically kind of hand-holding. They'll come down and help us out with a lot of things as well under the contract.
So you're saying that we're saving $60,000. Would that be what it would cost us a year to have a system?
That's what it would cost right now, combined between TDC flag program, between school district, sheriff's office with their HyperReach program, and I think there was one other one. So that's kind of combined savings. So the agencies that are currently paying for a notification system don't have to pay for it anymore, so therefore that's where the cost savings comes into play.
So by getting those 4 or 5 different departments together, then we're saving, okay.
Absolutely.
This might be an obvious question. You were talking a lot about landlines earlier, but most people are probably going to have this go to their cell, correct?
Yes, a lot of people are going to go have it go to the cell, and the Amber Alert. Are you familiar with the Amber Alert program? Wireless Emergency Alerts, WIA. That's under a program called IPAWS, Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. Myself, Chris Elitis, who's my ops coordinator, we just went through training last week to use IPAWS. So if we have a major emergency, we're going to be able to use IPAWS to push it to cell phones that are not registered into the system. Like, we don't register for the Amber Alerts, but we get it. And it's based on geographic area around certain towers. So we're going to have the ability to use iPause within this system as well. And that's really going to be strictly an emergency management and sheriff's office function into the system. Everbridge is working with the major cell companies to see how they can actually push to the numbers without going through iPause and WEA. So there's some enhancements that they're in the process of working on as well.
So we can go in there now and sign up and...
You could sign up on Alert Walton right now. We had, before we did the test, we had 600 subscribers. As of last week, we were up to 1,000. So we're actively pushing the system. So hopefully we'll get a lot more folks involved in it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll be around till afterwards, so if anybody has any questions, they can grab me and talk about it.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just real quick, just to tag along to what Mr. Goldberg was saying, this is something that we're going to evaluate for the FLAG program and see how we can integrate that program into this to see if we can save some dollars. So we're going to look to do that over this next season and see how that goes, and then depending on how that goes, then we might see about doing away with what we're paying right now for that texting program. So see how it goes, and then we'll evaluate it, and then we'll obviously bring recommendations back to the council.
All right, excellent, thank you. Okay. Cinder.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Catherine Simon Andrew with Zender Communications, just here to give you our marketing highlights from December and January. So we'll start with media. We always bring you guys new opportunities that are exciting that we're working on. The first we have here is a TripAdvisor. It's a native advertising placement that is now part of our co-op program. So it will deliver guaranteed leads based on whatever package the co-op partner has signed up for. It is in feed, targeted to our key markets, to people who have already searched for Florida Panhandle destinations within TripAdvisor. And as you'll see, just in our first month, we are already exceeding the average click-through rate that TripAdvisor has set for their goals. Another opportunity to reach our active travelers is Under Armour Connected Fitness. They place advertisements within the Map My Fitness, Map My Run, and MyFitnessPal applications. So when you're searching for, say you've done your workout and you go and set it in, you would be looking at your news feed to see what your friends have done, and our ad would pop up telling you to come to South Walton, check out our eco-exploring opportunities, and links back to the website. And again, this is already performing higher than their outline click-through rates. We're always trying to achieve at least 50% of our media buy in added value. We're ahead of that at 67% so far this fiscal, over $1.7 million. And that added value is just free coverage for the destination that comes in form of email blasts, advertorials, social media content. The example we have here is a social media content piece. Coastal Living posted our content that we provided to them to their 244,000 followers on Instagram. So it just is that third-party endorsement as well. In our brand digital performance, our native advertisements again are just performing so well. We place with a ad serving platform called Orange 142, and they place our content articles that don't look like advertisements. They do say advertisement on them, but they look a little bit more like just the content that you would be seeing on websites like southernliving.com, The Atlantic, Forbes, and then encourage people to click through to our content on the website. So we do have a YOLO article, we have one about Sandcastle Building, we have one about see where the Truman Show was filmed and all of that. So we're seeing a lot of engagement on our content articles, not just by the things that we push out like e-newsletters, but also these paid media placements.
So desktops is still higher. That means there's people at work that are looking
Yes.
at other things.
Yes. And these websites are typically, they're reading the more news on their desktop. So in our SEM recap, we continue to hit over industry averages and over our click-through goals. We are constantly monitoring these, making sure we're looking at the competitiveness of keywords and adjusting our spend accordingly. And then on the creative and digital front, you will start to see our new 2017 visitor guide out in the market. It's very, continues to follow our pattern for trip planning, has a lot of information about the destination, and this year we've added an eco-exploring section, so it's not only a little bit of information about all of the opportunities that we have beyond the beach in the eco-exploring front, but we also have listings for eco-exploring as well. We have one of our signature event banners, Wine, Women, and Shoes, this month, and the messaging is step out and kick back, and then the information about the event. And we also have the Seaside School Half Marathon and Taste of the Race, Speed Up, Chow Down, and those are animated banners that run within our signature events program and are supported by radio. On the social media side, we continue to see steady growth on all of our channels. Our year-over-year growth continues to trend upward. Instagram is really key for us right now, with seeing 117% growth year-over-year. And our page performance index, we've done an in-depth review of this, looking at why we are a little bit lower than our competitors. We focused on growth for a long time as far as our paid media goes, focused on getting the audience to us. And we do have a very large audience, and now we're shifting that focus to engagement to make sure that our performance is in line with some of our competitors.
Got a quick question.
Sure.
I noticed that I had that circled. It's a big drop compared to where we used to be. We used to be right up there with Hilton Head, 30A, and Sowall. We were going back and forth. So why would we change that strategy? Because obviously social media is probably where everybody's going in and getting their information.
Yes, and looking at those competitors, they are focusing on that engagement. So if we look at the posts and with the engagement that we're seeing, we can tell that they are paying to promote those posts, and looking at their engagement rates, that's where we're not competing at the moment. So trying to put more of our paid media behind the engagement to make sure that we're hitting that audience and our content's getting in front of the audience.
That's a major drop from when we were in the 20% range.
Yes, and it also depends on what our paid media spend is at the moment. So at times we do have the shoulder season reserve spending and emerging markets campaign that focus on video content. And when we're running those during shoulder season, we do see that spike. But we're seeing the dip when we're not running those campaigns. So what we're looking at now is making sure that we're even with our paid media spend, because Facebook will ding you if you stop spending money with them. So, and then we're also looking at some new and innovative things to do in Facebook. I don't know if everybody saw it, but we had our Monday motivation moment yesterday, a live video, and as of this morning had already reached 100,000 people completely organically, and hadn't put any money behind it. So people really love seeing the beach. They love seeing that lapping water. So continuing to make sure we're looking at new and innovative things to do there.
Okay, thank you.
And then our content marketing, these are our January articles. We know families are coming here for spring break, so just giving them a little bit more information on everything to do in the destination. Taking a donut tour of South Walton as well. We know those perform very well. People love their sweets. And then Preserving South Walton, just a little bit about the Friends of Scenic 30A and how Scenic 30A came to be. And those are our updates. Any other questions?
Any questions? No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one comment. You were asking about the social media efforts. I would like to add, though, that we are getting ready to post a job next week for a content person who will help in those social media efforts. So hopefully once we get that person on board and get them up to speed, that will help in those efforts as well.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jay.
Good morning, Council. I'm Philip Downs, Senior Partner of Downs and St. Germain Research. Going to present to you the fall visitor tracking results and also share with you some findings about first-time visitors. We have well over 50 slides, so we're just going to hunt and pick here and look at some key performance metrics. We're looking at fall, which represents September, October, and November. And this is a happy story. This is a good news story. If you look across the state, upscale destinations like South Walton are relatively flat year to year. Some of the value destinations are up, but upscale destinations like South Walton are fairly flat. So you are way above the norm. In fact, I believe that this is the best set of numbers across the state for upscale destinations. So hats off to everybody involved. And if you look at TDT collections up about 9%, visitors up about 9%, spending up about 9%, this is all great news. As we look at some of the profile data, just to pick out a few facts here and there, about half the folks are coming here with their children in the fall. They're staying about 5 or 6 nights. One of the nice things, the household income of our fall visitors is up about $7,000. So we're attracting more people, but we're attracting the right people. We have a lot of loyalists. 1 in 3 fall visitors has been here at least 10 times. But at the same time, we still attract new people. 1 out of 5 visitors in the fall was a first-time visitor. Over 90% will return. They're planning their trips 4 to 6 months out. So folks who come for 5 or 6 days are taking a long time to think about where they're going. And they're coming from the southeast for the most part. Our fall visitor is very much a drive visitor. We're getting some reaction from the Midwest, but for the most part, it's the southeast. And they come down to do the things that all of our visitors do throughout the year. The beach is down a little bit in the fall, but not much. They go to our restaurants, they relax and unwind. And active sports like golf and tennis, not so much, but still part of the action. So we'll go through this looking at
Philip,
yes, Tim.
one question. On the attractions on that last slide, what are the attractions? Because that one went up.
Yeah, that is self-defined by the visitor.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is just another box to check off, and whatever they feel an attraction is, that's, could be putt-putt golf.
Yeah, that's what just.
I mean, we are not a big attractions
Yeah,
destination.
yeah.
This is not Disney World.
All right, thanks.
On that visitor origins slide that you had up there?
That one?
Yeah, all the markets except for 3 have gone down. Indiana went up, Alabama and Tennessee. Georgia is down, but still the top 1.
Yeah, those numbers are very close, Gary. If you were thinking about a sampling error involved in this, there's not much change. And looking at market destinations, the Southeast again, heavily represented. Our go-to bread and butter markets like Atlanta, Nashville, Birmingham do very well in the fall. Most of the folks drive, 84%, but those who do fly in the fall, fairly evenly split between VPS and ECP. 93% will return, great number. Looking at expenditures, each party that comes down here spends nearly $4,000. They're planning, as I mentioned, 4 to 6 months out. About half the folks take that long in terms of deciding and planning their vacations. Most of them have smartphones or tablets, and they use those while they're in destination to figure out what they're going to do. About 1 out of 5 uses a visitor's guide, and most of those are using it online.
I'm like 5 pages back still, sorry.
Sorry?
I'm like 5 pages back still. I've got
Okay.
I've got a question.
I just didn't want to bore you
No,
with too many
I
numbers.
marked these the other night, but on that South Walton Gap analysis, isn't the value for your travel dollar what you had mentioned before, that it's real important to not have such a big variance, and here we have an almost 10-point variance?
I mean, that's a challenge for upscale destinations.
Yeah.
It's not just a South Walton issue, it's upscale destinations in general. And you have to evaluate that number, that gap, in terms of the percentage who say they'll come back, which is well over 90%, and the percentage of loyalists, people who've been here 10 plus times, which is 1 out of 3 fall visitors. So this is an issue, yes, but it's not a debilitating issue. I think we'll just move on. Our demographics here, we mentioned the household income, very good. We're attracting a quality visitor. And these data come from nearly 750 surveys that we do, and we appreciate our partners in this. Mark's team always is great on this. Gary's group gives us ADR. Pam's group has been involved. We appreciate all the partners who take part in this research. We have a bunch of GIS maps, and they're fun to look at. Given the time consideration, we won't spend much time on these, but you can look at what markets bring more money. You can look at what markets stay longer. And there's generally a correlation between distance and those figures. Further away, they spend more time here, they spend more money. We can look at first-time visitors on these maps. You get lots of interesting data that can be helpful to marketing. We can look at our loyalists, mostly from the southeast. We can look at our flyers, people from further away. We can look at the folks who are more likely to bring children. All these maps can hone in on marketing variables of interest. So any questions on the fall tracking data?
Let me ask you a question about basically in general the source of your data. So is this source of data all originating from visitors who are coming and paying into the BedTech system? So would it exclude second homeowners who come and visit and bring family members, but they're not actually, actually paying for a room night?
We actually do pick up some of those folks by interviewing every month on the beach, and we also conduct interviews at ECP, and we conduct interviews at events.
Okay. And what do you see in here? Anything in here surprise you, and how does this stack up against some of the other seasons like summer, which obviously is our biggest season?
Fall represents about 15 to 16% of your visitors and economic impact. I mean, it is well behind summer, which is about 50%, and behind spring, which is about 25%. But fall is growing. I mean, one of the first figures that we showed in the key performance indexes is that visitation in the fall went from about 550,000 to over 600,000 in this last year, and back in 2014 it was about 500,000. So you've seen about a 20% increase over 2 years in your fall visitor. That's terrific. Any other questions on the fall tracking?
That's it.
We looked at first-time visitors, and again, this is helpful to Jay and PJ and the Zender team to dig into, but just to share a few things. One of the things that stuck out with me is that first-time visitors have actually less income than our repeat visitors, and they're spending a little less time with us. On the other hand, they spend a little bit more money. Their rating of the experience here, and this is data collected over a year's time from fall of 15 through summer of 16. They spend a little less time with us, but they're more likely to look at a visitor's guide. Obviously, they're first-time visitors. They don't know the area, so they're looking for information. They're coming proportionally more compared to loyalists from states like Texas or from the Midwest. I mean, if you look at the bottom part of that graph, we've got more first-time visitors from the Midwest vis-a-vis our typical visitor, and also from the Northeast. They come to do basically the same things that our repeat visitors do, and they get involved in basically the same activities. They tend to get a little less involved in active things like golf and tennis or biking and running. So that's a quick overview of our first-time visitor. Any questions about that? Tim?
On the southeast, Philip, from 72, it dropped from 72% down to 61 for fall. In southeast is, we're the second most driven to location in the state of Florida, this Panhandle area. So why would you think we'd be losing?
Well, to me, this is a first-time visitor in the rightmost column, and all the rest of our visitors in the left column. Okay. So we're comparing folks who are experiencing South Walton for the first time. I think that's a positive number, because you're attracting some new visitors. So you're getting folks from Chicago to come down, or Washington, Baltimore, outside of our traditional drawing area. So I think that's a very positive.
I want to make sure that was clear, so,
Yeah.
okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a moment before we jump into group sales and visitor center updates. Just in the time since we last met, Pamela Watkins, our director of sales, who was with us for 20 years, retired and has moved to Colorado to be closer to family. And so we wish her well in her retirement and hope that everything goes well for her in the future. So with that, I wanted to introduce the interim director of sales, Carly McMillan.
Good morning.
Good
Council.
morning.
For group sales, since our last meeting, the sales team has attended Florida Encounter. It is a meetings trade show produced by Visit Florida. Let me get a little closer. Is that good? All right. So at Florida Encounter, approximately 213 meeting planners were in attendance, along with 97 hoteliers and destinations. South Walton sponsored the VIP reception, and with that, it allowed us to have speaking time with the new meeting planners, as well. In attendance, we had Sandestin Golf and Beach Resort and Topsail in attendance, so they also had speaking time. The team also attended the Visit Florida Media Mixer, which allowed us an opportunity to meet with writers for Preview Magazine, Smart Meetings, and Convene. Also, in December, the team attended Connect DC in Washington, D.C. It's a show produced by Collinson Media. This two-day conference had over 100 meeting planners that take their business outside of D.C. to Florida. And with that, we had 16 pre-scheduled appointments with meeting planners. Last month, the sales team attended the Travel and Adventure Show in Chicago, Illinois. This show, over 2 days, brought in more than 24,000 consumers. So with that, the team was able to engage with thousands of consumers interested in travel destinations, and we disseminated more than 3,000 pieces of collateral. For the upcoming sales missions, later this month, we will be attending Rendezvous South. It is a new meeting show on our sales mission. We opened it up as a booth share opportunity, so Sandestin Golf and Beach Resort will be attending that show with us. And also, we will be attending the Wine, Women, and Shoes event in Louisville, Kentucky. Convention South recently announced their 2016 Reader Choice Awards. They received over 4,000 votes and named 250 meeting sites and destinations in the Southeast. Visit South Walton, Watercolor Inn and Resort, the Pearl, and the Hilton Sandestin were named Reader Choice Awards within our destination. Later this month, we will be hosting our second Sales Lunch and Learn at the Topsail Beach and Racquet Resort. This is our second one, so we invite all of the sales professionals within South Walton to come, and it opens up a forum for us to let them know what we have upcoming and discussions of what they would like for us to be doing in the future. And that is it for group sales. I'll move on to visitor services. The Visitor Center in December hosted 735 visitors. It is a 14% decrease over last year, but we had a 125% increase in merchandise sales with a monthly total of 2,353. In January, the Visitor Center hosted 1,546 visitors, which was a 24% decrease over last year, but we had a 92% increase in merchandise sales totals with $2,240. So for the first quarter, which is October through December, our record shows we had 2,786 visitors with $6,094 in merchandise sales. In the winter, our team attends all of these snowbird meetings. They have attended 3, and then we have one more tomorrow. So as of today, they have engaged with over 1,000 winter visitors and disseminated more than 3,600 pieces of collateral. Later this month, the visitor services team will be hitting the streets and going to all of our bed tax collectors and providing them with our collateral, especially the beachgoer guide, to make sure that they are fully stocked for the spring and summer visitors. A lot of our bed tax collectors like to put these items within the welcome kits. And lastly, I have our professional development, Christy Gibson, which is our lead in the Visitor Center. She is currently at the Visit Florida Certified Travel Information Center Summit in Tampa, Florida. And next month, I will be attending our Simple View Summit on behalf of the organization. Questions?
Any questions? All good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. All right. Ms. PJ.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's nice to be here today. First official presentation, bear with me. I would like to comment before starting on the research presentation that Mr. Downs just presented to you, because I think we have an interesting update. I want to announce that all research conducted by Visit South Walton is now available on our website for our partners to use in their business planning purposes. We have had requests for that. We want to make sure all this information is readily available. Different businesses, tourism-related businesses, and other businesses in our community have requested this information in order to build their own annual strategic business plans, and we think this is an important communication tool for them. So that is now available on visitsouthwalton.com/industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
This morning, I'd like to share with you a little bit. Oh, I have the clicker. Whoops. Here we go, about film projects. And what we're finding is that the film industry in this particular community, we are garnering more and more requests. We are fielding more and more requests from producers, directors, corporations. These are requests for information. Sometimes they're looking for referrals for site locations. Sometimes they're already working in partnership with our local partners in the industry, and they just need a little bit more information, things to add to or enhance a photo shoot or a video production, or some filming. So in the current, I guess it's probably been 40 days or so, we've had outreach from HGTV. We have had a video shoot from partnership with the Backstreet Boys and Florida Georgia Line, and Macy's, not only at Alice Beast, but they're working with our partners in Seaside. I think they were long after the January 23rd date. So I think that represents for us an opportunity for future growth, and we certainly understand the potential for helping to market this industry in the shoulder and low seasons to help us to garner a little bit more visitation. So visitation is not necessarily just the independent traveler, weddings and meetings. We have perhaps another industry to take a peek at. We also recently added something new to our schedule, and we attended the International Media Marketplace in New York, and we did this in partnership with Turner Public Relations, which is our contract PR agency. This is a new show for us, but it's not a new show in the industry. And if you think about this, this was like speed dating with journalists. It allowed us to go in advance of our arrival. We had 2 spots, 2 tables, 2 sets of interviews. One, Kelly Carter represented Visit South Walton, and we also had a representative from Turner with a separate appointment table, 24 appointments in a day. It was a speed dating marathon. We prepared information in advance. We posted that information in our online profile, and then we could reach out to journalists that we felt had the highest propensity to write about our destination and influence travelers in our key geographic markets. And they did the same. When they had an interest in the topics that we were presenting, then they too reached out to us, and we set up a mutual schedule of appointments, and all day long, that's what we did, was meet with these journalists and talk about the opportunities for visitors to experience a very authentic Florida experience here in the Panhandle, and specifically in South Walton. So we had 2 branded tables. We briefed 48 top-flight travel journalists, editors, broadcasters. We came prepared with story ideas. We also pitched those in advance, and we felt that the return on investment is going to be very high. We're currently looking at follow-up with these journalists, and journalists with Condé Nast Traveler, National Geographic, the Huffington Post, USA Today Travel, and so forth. So we had a great turnout, a lot of independent journalists, contract journalists out there as well. And so we'll report to you in the near future about some actual stories that have been printed based on this initial information that we've shared, and hopefully we can invite some more travel journalists to our destination to get a first-hand experience. Any questions about that show?
Just curious.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you're up in New York and you're talking to journalists from around the country, maybe even around the world, right?
That's absolutely true.
Are you finding that our market is still considered a little bit of a well-kept secret, you know, from a lot of regions?
Absolutely. It is considered a hidden gem. And so to be able to broaden the horizon of folks that don't necessarily know who we are or what the special vacation offering is a real opportunity for us. So we definitely were a well-hidden gem. We also focused our interviews with journalists who work in the domestic U.S. market, because that is what our current strategic plan is. So as our plans change in the future, we certainly have an opportunity to look at international journalists as well. But it is a very finite period of time. So we wanted to look at scheduling meetings with those that had the potential highest return on investment for the organization. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
thank you. Finally, I wanted to look at a quick year-to-date snapshot. This is a report from Turner Public Relations. I will start with some of the number of articles: coastalliving.com, Best Places to Eat, womenshealthmag.com, Dreamy Holiday Rentals, and that ran in January. AJC.com, Christmas in the Florida Panhandle. We're also already fielding questions about New Year's Eve for 2017. So talk about getting ahead of the game. As soon as those festivities wrapped up, we're starting out the gate and starting to promote 12 months ahead. Redtricycle.com with spring break travel. And when we do talk about spring break, I want to be clear that we're talking about this as a family destination. We're not out there pitching spring break, but there are always inquiries, and we are focusing and packaging our replies along the family lines. That's the clientele we'd like to create here and maintain. Our impressions were over 37 million, media value $345,000 and change. And 13 media assists and 2 direct visits as a result of Turner's outreach and collaboration with Visit South Walton. Press trips, we had 2 recent journalists come in, Chris Mother with the Boston Globe and Suzanne Farah with Nightwire Magazine and 0008 Magazine. We also have some upcoming media visits, the Daily Meal and Red Tricycle coming in April. So again, we're trying to fill the queue with those types of visits. We work with our local partners to host these journalists, and we share that opportunity equally. So sometimes one partner may have availability. The next time we reach out to the group, that particular property doesn't have availability, and we have the opportunity to work with yet another partner. So we try to share those opportunities based on the journalist's needs and the audience that they are talking about. Current story angles and pitch are Valentine's Day, New Year, New York. We just wrapped up 38 Songwriters Festival, and of course the spring break travel is still a hot topic out in the marketplace. Any questions about the Turner report? Yes, sir. Good morning. I'm so sorry. I am PJ Lohman. I am the new Director of Marketing and Interim Communications as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
During the presentation, you used the word spring break as much as we gave it. Can we make a deal, you and I, that we never use that term again?
Yes, sir?
In our company, we do not use that term, and we use the term spring vacation.
All right,
And I
fair
think
enough.
It's just a good idea, even in our public presentations, and what we do in our own businesses, that we avoid using that word, because it encourages what we're trying to deter.
Understood.
And just wanted to point that out, not as a criticism.
I appreciate the positive feedback.
Okay.
Constructive criticism is always welcome. So thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Thank you, PJ. Mr. Bryan.
Good morning again. Beach operations update. All righty. Garbage for December, averaging about 140 bags a day, typical for that time of year. Year over year, we were actually up about 43%. No real reason why, we just had a few more visitors here. They were leaving more garbage. January, pretty flat, a little over 100 bags a day. Once again, we average, bags per truck. So we get so many truckloads a day. We use pickup trucks with racks on them. Scientific method, January year over year, once again, up a little bit more. So I think that's a reflection that we are having more visitors during the winter. Beach code enforcement, this is our contacts. A contact is where we actually stop and talk to somebody to mete out some form of enforcement action. As you can see, we typically verbal warnings and a lot of incompliance. A little bit of increase from 2015 December to 2016 December. January, about the same as year over year. This is our FYTD. This is fiscal year to date. So 2016, we had a total of around 3,800 contacts. As you can see, this year we're about on par for that. This is the first 4 months. 1,300 is about 34%. So we're looking around about the same as we saw last year. I predict that'll pick up because we have 6 new code enforcement officers this year and a little bit different focus on how to bring harmony to the beach. Beach code enforcement updates. Last meeting I gave you what we were getting added to our force. So this month I want to give you what our force is. So we have 1 beach code enforcement manager, 10 beach code enforcement officers, 2 beach code enforcement admin administrative assistants. As you know, we're taking over some of the permitting, the beach-rated permitting functions. Beach ambassador manager and 4 beach ambassadors. The 4 beach ambassadors, there's 2 full-time and 2 part-time, what we call summer seasonal. We've also partnered with the volunteer program that got started middle of last year. So we'll be working in concert with them to, that's more of our educational side of on the beach. Our interactions are fun, educational, helping people understand what our beach-related codes are and also what is proper beach etiquette. There's some things that aren't necessarily codified, but we consider beach etiquette. Capital improvement projects. Multi-use path renovations, Great Beach, Western Lake. There's 2 phases of that. Phase 1 is watercolor to west side of Western Lake. If you've been down that stretch of road, you know they're coming along really nice. They set the metal spans mid-January, maybe early January. They're working hard on the rest of it. Looking at probably a May. Cliff, is that right? May possibly for completion on that project? Yes. Phase 2 is from the west side of Western Lake to Highway 283. That one actually got split up a little bit. Our initial plan included an easement from the state park system, and that was going to help us to get around the utility poles. There's actually a drainage and grading easement. We weren't going to put the path in the park, but we needed to be able to move some dirt there. That didn't work out like we planned, so we are now redesigning that portion of the path. The parking section of that's part of the 30A parking program as well. That is moving along. They started on that January, the reconfiguration of the intersection there. They increased the turning radiuses and all that. That part's moving along. It should be done before summer season hits. Highway 98 to 30A West Connector. This is the portion of the path on the west end of 30A that we want to connect to the sidewalk at or around Mac Bayou Road. There's a small section on 30A. Public Works Environmental Department has applied for a grant. They actually have the plan for that section of the path. We're just waiting on the money. And then the portion on Highway 98, we're waiting for that highway to be reclassified from rural to urban. And what that will do will allow the path to be put closer to the road, make it easier to construct. If you know, there's a double swell there, and so the path would have to be on that second swell, and it just was very problematic to get the width, and then there's several culvert crossings that it have to have. Waiting on this, more than likely, the path will be part of the sidewalk system that's installed when the new road or the new lanes are added. 5 years down the road is best estimate. Multi-use path renovations. We have the section of path from 283 to County Road 83 under design and permit, and so that'll be new 10-foot wide path using all the standards that we want to eventually make all the path in Walton County. 10-foot wide, proper signage, continuous ribbon, driveway cuts will have to be cut on each side of it so that our path is continuous. Multi-use path wooden bridge repair replacement at the different lake crossings. Some of our lake crossings have metal spans, but they have wooden approaches. Those wooden approaches, and there's a few just single wooden bridges, have reached their service life. So we're designing, permitting, replacement of those. This is all under FY 2016 money. In our DA Phase 3 projects, this was projects that were started back in 2012 with some of the early money from the Deep Horizon oil spill. So it's improvements, basically mechanical, electrical, plumbing improvements to 2 of our regional beach accesses. That's Ed Walline, Gulfview Heights. Ed Walline is also getting some new picnic pavilions. And then the other 2 projects in that are a new neighborhood beach access in the Dune Allen area, which is adjacent to or be close proximity to where the East Allen Loop Road comes out on 38. Typical neighborhood beach access, boardwalk, dune walkover, some benches, bike racks, rent shower. And then the other one is a new canoe kayak bay access in the Point Washington area. Small piece of property the county owned. It'll be about 5 or 6 parking spaces at the head of it, concrete walk meandering through it, some picnic tables, and a high-low pier to allow for canoe and kayak launch. Those projects should go up for bid here in the next month. This is completely administrated by FDEP. We are the recipient of completed projects. Some projects we are doing ourselves is repair improvements of our beach accesses. We have 4 regional beach accesses and 16 neighborhood beach accesses. And this is what I call a facelift. We're replacing deck boards and handrails on the dune walkover boardwalks and structure as required. So those are under design and permit. We expect to have those completed and out for bid here soon, and then we'll schedule the construction so as not to interfere with the summer season. So design and permit is taking a little bit longer than we expected, but it's dealing with the FDEP on working seaward of the coastal conservation construction line. These are our 2 new pieces of property we've purchased, Dune Allen Regional Beach Access and the Great and Grand Central Parking Area. We have gone through the continuing engineering services contracts with the county. We received prices on both of them. The Dune Allen project came in a little higher than we expected for design permitting, so we're having a meeting with them tomorrow to discuss how to get that price down. Great and Grand was a request for conceptual price. This year we'll probably use that for just surface parking and go through the year developing that into, our first phase will more likely be just a paved area for about 180 parking spaces. And then we'll do some more research on what we can do with that piece of property as a whole. This is the Dune Allen property before, as we purchased it, had a house on one lot, garage on the other lot, and this is it after we've done our demolition. So it'll sit like that until we get the design permitting done. Don't expect to have it done for this summer season. Probably will start construction sometime in summer after we get the design permitting complete and all the approvals.
Will the public be able to use it?
Well, I don't think we're going to allow that because it's sandy, parking area right there. There'll be a lot of bogging down. Don't really want to bring in a bunch of gravel. The boardwalk is not our typical boardwalk design of 6 feet wide. Right. It's only 4 feet wide. So I think we'll let it sit like it is. We'll have it fenced off so that keep people out of it. Now, with the general public that lives in that neighborhood, filter across our property, quite possibly.
Yeah.
But we'll have some sand fence to look good across the front of their property, a gate so we can access in and out, and try to monitor it. I mean, it won't be advertised as for use, but you know how vacant lots go. 30-day parking project, finally getting to the point of bidding this one out. Bids out February 21st. This is the other 4 locations that were what they call focus areas. So it's Fort Panic area, Edwa Lane, Blue Mountain Beach, Regional Beach Access, and then down at the end of Eastern Lake Road. It's all right-of-way parking, brick paper services, small islands intermittent in between them, and some landscaping to beautify those areas. So the intent was to get parking close to Regional Beach Accesses to supplement what we already have. And it's been long ago. Started back in April of 2014, and we're finally getting to the point of digging dirt. Any questions?
When's that parking supposed, I saw they were digging in Drayton Beach, when's that parking supposed to be completed?
Cliff, you got an answer on the parking phase 2 of Western Lake Bridge, the parking section of it?
Yeah, it was a 120-day contract, and so their notice to proceed started somewhere around the first week of January. So probably finishing up somewhere around the end of April.
Yep. The rest of the parking will get started, even though it will carry on in the summer season. They also have a 120-day performance period. So if we get it bid out, all the contracts in place, give them notice to proceed, they should, be substantially complete by July 1st.
Okay, any other questions? That's it, thank you, buddy.
Thanks, sir.
Next. Jason?
Board members, good morning again. Jason Cushall, Director of Administration. I have a real quick update on the parking program, a little bit of a history behind it. 2 years ago, the TDC approached Topsail State Park and wanted to talk about doing a parking partnership there. They had a day-use parking area with about 100 spaces, and it was very underutilized. And so I was actually the manager at the time, so we worked out a program. I was at Henderson Beach State Park before. We had a program with the city there. And what we did was from Labor Day to Memorial Day, we would provide parking, or the parking would be provided, and the TDC would pay for the day-use visitors that came in to park there. That did 2 things. It gave awareness of the state park and the opportunities for eco-sport and eco-tourism opportunities there. And it also took some of the parking load off some of the adjacent regional beach accesses and other parking areas. Well, we had a post meeting after this year. It was the second year. Again, they saw an increase in it. The park was very appreciative and the simplicity of the mechanisms behind it for them. And I met with the district and some of the folks from DEP, and we talked about possibly expanding the program to include Drayton Beach and Deer Lake. And they were very receptive to it. So currently I've been working on a memo of understanding, both of those parks for them to review. And I'm also getting some statistics back from them so I could better predict the amount of funding that could be required to do a parking program with them. So I'm hoping that keeps progressing towards that positive aspect, especially for Drayton. I think that area would be very exciting to receive. Also, I've got one other thing.
Before we move on, Jason, if we could, while I know it's not an agenda item, because we are working towards that and we don't know when the actual return date on that MOU would be, I would ask if the TDC Council believes that's a program we should follow through with on these parking program updates he's proposed, that the TDC would make a motion today to recommend to the BCC to approve those updates to the program. That way, if we get an MOU back within the next 30 days rather than 60 days, it can go ahead and be executed because it has been approved, and that will actually require county execution. So in an abundance of caution, because it's been laid out before you today, I think it'd be best for us to go ahead and have that approval today.
Okay. All right, Clay, thank you. All right, so, got a motion? You got a second?
Can you outline the program quickly? The details of the program?
Yes, absolutely. the first 2 years of the program, what we did again was we allotted a specific amount of budgeting, $25,000 to pay for parking for all the vehicles that came into Topsail State Park during Labor Day to Memorial Day. And so what they would do is they would do an invoice on their point of sale system, and then every month they would invoice the TDC for the amount of visitation they had. They'd send in all their statistics, all their parking statistics, and then we would issue a check for that. So that's how the program would work, and then it would end on that day. We allotted $25,000 with an additional $10,000 if needed, if they found that the parking was such a success that we needed to add more funding to it to cover the parking. And then once the funding was up, if they used the entire amount, then the parking program would halt at that point.
How much did they charge per car?
It's for Topsail, it was $6 for up to 8 people in a vehicle and $4 for a single person in a vehicle.
Is that 25,000 for all three or
That
each?
25 each. Topsail last year used $22,000 of the $25,000. So what we would do is allot 25 for each, realizing that Deer Lake would have a lower point, but that would give us some funding in case say Grayton was to go over, then we'd be able to adjust it.
And for us to be able to have Grayton involved and kind of working with you to do that's a big one right there for us.
Yes, sir.
Because I know that's a very popular area.
We brought up a discussion about having, potentially using the state parks as a parking ride system. Has that been discussed any further? Or
I've talked to the management and the district team at each one of the parks, and they're very, they had a very positive light, actually asked if they would be a stopping point if we did a transit system, transportation system. They asked to be a stopping point.
Good.
So that was good.
Excellent.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, so we have a motion, and do we have a second? Any other questions? Okay, second, any other questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
And one
you.
last thing, which I received a couple of weeks ago in the mail. I've been in the reserves for a while now with the military and active duty, both in the Navy. And I just recently, in the month of December, did actually was requested to do 28 days overseas in Germany with the European Headquarter Command. And they sent a letter that was titled to the Board of County Commissioners and also the TDC Advisory Council. And it says, "Dear Commissioners, I would like to personally thank you, the Walton County BCC and TDC, for their dedication, loyalty, and sacrifice they have made in supporting their service members in the United States Armed Forces. Specifically, you're enabling Chief Jason Cutshaw to participate in the United States European Command's training missions has been critical to the defense of our great country. Chief Cutshaw worked with my team at the Secretary of Joint Chief of Staff on multiple occasions for the past 2 years. He has been a great example of all who wear the uniform, and we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude for his outstanding support to our nation. His labors will have both positive and lasting effects in keeping our reserve forces ready and to assist in achieving peace and stability in our nation. Know that each time Chief Jason Cutshaw is charged with an assignment at UCOM, he is quickly to learn, lead, and perform at a high level. I deeply appreciate of the remarkable efforts that you and the professionals at the Walton County TDC have endured during his absence while serving abroad. Again, my heartfelt appreciation goes out to you and your team for your support, United States Armed Forces. Signed sincerely, Calvin E. Daniels, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force." And also a certificate of appreciation. Headquarters U.S. European Command presented a certificate of appreciation as awarded to Mr. Jay Tusa in recognition for a faithful cooperative spirit in the release of an employee for performance of military duty. The Assistant Chief of Staff awards a certificate of appreciation. The invaluable contribution you and your organization are making to the defense of our country is greatly appreciated. Your continued interest will assist materially in strengthening the armed forces components and thus maintain our national security. Given this 23rd day of December 2016, signed Andrew J. Kostick, Jr., Colonel, United States Marine Corps, Assistant Chief of Staff. And I greatly appreciate my team for covering for me and covering down while I was away.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
I'd like to just echo the applause. I mean, I'd like to thank Jason Cutshaw for his service to our country. I mean, he's been in the military for over 20 years. And Jason, thank you again.
Did you get us some new visitors while you were there, Jason?
Okay, we have quite a few things to go over, so I'll try to go through quickly. If you need me to stop and go over something in a little more detail, by all means, stop me and let me know. So real estate, top of the list, just a quick update on where we are with that. I guess about, 6 months ago, we started looking at beach access for the county. In addition, a little bit of parking as well, but the focus has now kind of changed since we purchased one parcel for parking. So now the focus really is strictly beach access. And so Brian kind of mentioned a little bit earlier in his presentation about those two parcels that we purchased last fall, the Great and Grand parcel, particularly for parking, but also perhaps for something like a public space, like a public amphitheater or something like that, and then also the Dune Allen property for beach access. So I wanted to give you an update on a few other parcels we're looking at and where we are in the process and kind of dollars, what we're looking at. Real quick, there are two pieces of property, actually three, that have moved forward to the appraisal process. It is two pieces of property at the Oyster Lake Outfall and three parcels over in Seagrove. So they kind of make up two projects, if you will, Oyster Lake Outfall and then Seagrove. So those 5 parcels have moved forward to the appraisal process, and we should be getting those back probably within the next week or two. Those properties collectively are worth about $11.5 million. Another piece of property we're looking at, and Mark Davis, the county attorney, is doing kind of some due diligence, doing some title search work, but this is over in Miramar Beach area on the eastern side of Miramar Beach across from Amalfi condos. There's a piece of property there that we're looking at for beach access. That parcel is $1.8 million. Then there is another piece that he is evaluating over just past Golf Place in that area on 30A. It is currently the Highlands House B&B. He's looking right now at that. He's kind of looking at an ingress and egress and beach access, so that's something he's kind of working on. And then lastly, over at Beachfront Trail, there's a parcel over there that he's looking at as well, and there's some issues perhaps with the homeowners association and approval and everything. So he's kind of working through all that right now. So anyway, collectively, all these properties that we're looking at, whether they're in appraisal process or in legal due diligence, the collective price for those properties is about $14 million. In meeting with Finance Department for the county, we have determined that we have about $18 million in reserves that we can spend on real estate. Now, what that said is that's not depleting our reserves. We're still leaving about $12 to $15 million in reserves. It's very prudent that we leave money in there. Heaven forbid, I don't want to say the hurricane word, but think stuff happens. And if we get some type of an event, we'll have money to repair our beaches, our boardwalks, our bathhouses, those type of things. So we feel like, around that $12 to $15 million range is a good number to leave in reserves for that. So any questions in regard to real estate? Richard?
Yeah, Jay, are you going to continue, when I say are you, is the TDC going to continue to pursue looking for additional properties in addition to what you have just told us about?
Well, in a short answer, yes. It all depends on where we come down to dollar-wise and what we buy and then what Mark deems we can move forward with. Obviously, right now, what we have is kind of in the price range of what we have. We're a few dollars short. So depending on, he may come back and say, no, we can't move forward with this. And then if that's the case, then that might leave us some additional funds that we can then go out and look for some other areas. And then once we make that determination, we can then go back and say, okay, well, here's where we need to dedicate our look. And maybe it's over on the east end and the west end or what have you. And we'll make that determination, I think, kind of once we see what we have left to move forward on. But I think there'll be some extra dollars. Seacrest is still of interest to us. That we don't have anything over that way in the regional beach access. So I think, depending on what happens with this, we really need to focus our efforts on Seacrest after we kind of get through this phase.
Is there a given dollar amount that the TDC believes they have to have in reserve? Has that ever been established?
It hasn't been established. Like I said, I think we're comfortable with the $12 to $15 million range. I will say that I do think we need to be a little careful with the money we have in reserve and that we don't have too much. I mean, we all know what's going on right now in Tallahassee, and I think we need to be really smart in that the funds we have are secured and dedicated, and perhaps having, we don't have it anymore, but at one time we had $50 million in reserves. Well, maybe that's not the most prudent thing to do, because if the state's on the hunt for money, I'd rather spend our money here locally than give it to the capital.
I understand. I was just curious where it was. I'm a newcomer, so
right.
I'm a student who has
Yeah, so it's coming from our reserves, and we've determined that that $12 to $15 million range. I've had a conversation with Trammell, our engineering firm, and from the conversation I've had with them, in order, to get permits and get things done after an event of a storm, that $15 million range is a good figure.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, personnel, I'll give a quick update. I won't touch on what Brian talked about for his beach operations side, since he already went over that. Currently, we have on the admin side of things, Director of Communications position that is out there being advertised right now, as well as a Community Relations position. So those positions will be closing next week, and then we'll be starting the interviews most likely the week after that. Once we close those positions, we will then post 2 more communications jobs. One is, as I spoke of earlier, that content position that we'll be hiring for to help out with social media and web content. And those development of those areas. And then in addition to that is a public relations job. So we'll also have that. This week we are interviewing for a sales coordinator position. So hopefully we'll get that candidate selected and have them in place within the next couple of weeks. And I am getting ready to post next week the sales director job. So lots of jobs out there, but we're moving forward and getting these filled. It's critical for me in the organization that we get the right people to fill these positions, and that we don't just put somebody in place just to have a warm body in a spot. So if we cast the net and we don't get what we want, then we're going to recast the net, because we're going to make sure we have the right team in place at the TDC. So, any questions? Sheriff update. I just wanted to give a brief update on that. I went to the spring vacation meeting last week that he held. And Sheriff Atkinson was there, and he headed up the meeting to highlight his plans for, the spring season. College spring break will run from March 4th through the 31st, and the command center will be located over at Seascape, and that's followed by the high school break at which the command center is going to be over at Seaside, and that's going to be April 1st through the 15th. Again, this year, the Sheriff's Office has made it very clear they have a no-tolerance policy for illegal activity. And then in addition to presence on the beach and in these areas, they're also going to be beefing up their presence throughout the community with traffic enforcement. So they'll be watching for aggressive drivers, texting and driving, not wearing seatbelts, DUIs, that type of thing. So, end of the day, Sheriff's Office, as we all do, we want to make sure that our guests coming here are safe and have an enjoyable time, and that's what all these efforts are for. So, any questions on that I can address? Captain Rowell is here as well. He can address anything. Yes.
Just one comment.
Mm-hmm.
In the last couple of years, I have to just commend the Sheriff's Department on an outstanding job.
Yeah, they've done a very good job.
Jay, just want to confirm where the command centers are located. You say Seascape and Seaside?
Seaside.
Seaside.
Yeah, Seaside.
Seascape the last 2 weeks of March, and then Seaside the first 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, Perfect Awards. I wanted to give an update on this. We, and I'm not sure for the new council members, I'll just give a really brief overview on the Perfect Awards in case you're not familiar with them. Every year we have these different categories promoting our destination, favorite restaurant for, flip-flop cuisine for one, where you can just go, it's very casual. Then you kind of have fine dining. So you have all these different categories, art, biking, all these different things. So anyway, this year, for our Perfect Awards, we began distributing these, I guess, about 3 weeks ago. And we got a request, a public records request, for the data of how these votes went. And in that process, we went back and we looked at the numbers when the request came in, and we discovered that there were some discrepancies in the numbers, and there was one category that wasn't even recognized with an award. And then there were 5 other categories where the numbers were a little off. And so perhaps somebody who was second maybe got first, or third got second. And so I felt it was very important that we be very transparent in what happened. And so I sent out an email to our entire database for our industry partners, letting them know exactly what happened and how we were going to fix the issue. And so in addition to that, I reached out to the people who were overlooked for the awards, and I reached out to them directly and let them know what was going on. And so in the process of alerting everybody and then letting them know what we're doing, I'll just let you know how we fixed the situation. We updated our website with the correct information. We will be issuing new awards that were overlooked. And in some of the categories, perhaps the third place winner before got an award. We're not going to take that away from anybody. If you were given an award, we're going to honor that and we're going to let you keep your award. We are updating our booklet that we do for the Perfect in South Walton Awards, which we distribute in our visitor center and around town. And so that way everybody will have the most current information. I felt it was the best thing to do in light of what happened. Like I said, it's important that we be transparent. We came out, we owned up to the mistake, and we're fixing the mistake.
Thank you.
So, beach activities ordinance, real quick, the last TDC meeting, we had some lengthy discussions on these items, and so I just wanted to give you an update that we'll be having a meeting this afternoon with the BCC. It's a public hearing where we'll be finalizing these issues, so hopefully we can get all this done and get in place for the new season. It's upon us in a matter of weeks, so it's important we get this done. So very good. I thought our session here last time was very productive. The past couple of meetings we've had with the BCC have been very productive. People have been coming in and giving input, and so I feel we're at a really good place with these ordinances, and I think that with code enforcement, I think we're going to see a really good season this season. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that and keep you guys updated as we move forward in the season. Sunshine Shuttle, just a quick update on this. Since I started, I've been here 10 months now. I've had conversations with John Finch, and I know this has been going on for a few years now that predates my time here. But we are looking at some different ways perhaps to approach this purely from an advertising marketing standpoint. And one thing that I think we've come up with is a co-op opportunity for our industry partners. So this perhaps can be something where we take advantage of it and we market the flag program, beach safety. We market perhaps our events that happen in the off-season, the shoulder seasons. I think that's something that we can do. But then the other side of that is, how can we maybe make this to, perhaps a local retail shop or restaurant or even a bed tax collector where you can promote your business? And just like we have all of our other co-op opportunities, so right now we're looking at that, and this is all I have to report at this point. We're in conversations with John, so I'm hoping by the next TDC meeting I'll have something more concrete to bring back to you that you can look at and vote on and move forward on. So we will be bringing it back, since it's kind of a new scope. We'll be going to bring it back all the way to the marketing committee. So in March, we'll be bringing it back to the marketing committee for them to look at, review, and make the recommendation whether they want to move that forward back to you guys for the next TDC meeting. So that's kind of where we are right now. Any questions on that? Okay, and then audit update. This also predates me, but just to give an update where we are, the TDC had requested to get some feedback on structure and fees being paid. And as part of the DOR, the letter that was written to them, they responded back saying, really, this doesn't have anything to do with us. If you want this to be looked at, you need to kind of have your own external audit to be done. And so that kind of closed that door, unless we perhaps do want to do an external audit via, third-party company. However, though, for the portion that was the letter that was sent to the Auditor General, that right now is being done. There's an audit being done in the county. They're here auditing the planning department, and as part of the time while they're here, they are taking our request into consideration and looking at that. So I don't have any timeline as far as when that's going to be complete, and I'm going to bring that back to you, but I just wanted to let you know that it is in progress.
And I'll add into that for some of our new council members. I know some of you are very well versed with this. One of the TDC's issues that we are able to take up outside of our role as just an advisory board and outside of our role as a board that recommends and adopts a strategic plan related to the expenditure of the TDT is if we believe there's an issue with an expenditure, whether or not we believe it's invalid, whether we think there's just a question, whether we're simply concerned about it, this board has an independent duty outside of being an advisory board where it is required to provide written notice to both the BCC and the Department of Revenue of those. So what occurred was a letter was approved to be drafted by a prior version of this TDC council, where we had some concerns on two issues came out of the Maximus study, and that were the administrative and indirect cost of administration assessed by both the Walton County Clerk of Court and Walton County Admin for services related to the Tourist Development Council. Typically, for the clerk's office, just to give a short example, there's a 3% maximum fee related to the cost of administration. We've found in our research that across the state, that number varies wildly. Some don't adhere to that number at all. Some pay a flat 3% without any direct associated cost being determined. Some pay the actual cost. So that was a question that we wanted to look at about whether or not we were properly being assessed the cost out of our collections. So that's what started this letter. The Auditor General is in the process. Don't want to get into any specific details about what they are or not looking at or what that report will return, because obviously in that process with their office, we can't say. What they're looking at today may take an entirely different course over the next 2 weeks. What we wanted the board to be aware of is this is not a forgotten issue. It is still moving forward. The Auditor General, having come in specifically for the Planning Department, put this as a secondary item to that, hence the delay of almost a year. The second issue that we will probably be bringing back to you, and we want you to be aware of, because I know some of the council members are aware of what our neighbor has done over in Okaloosa in passing off collections to the State Department of Revenue. That is an issue that obviously we will continue to explore. We don't want to address that issue in any more detail right now today because of the pending Auditor General's issue and what those inquiries may be back and forth. But we are well aware of what they've done. We're well aware of the fact that DOR does not charge any collection fee as opposed to what local agencies do. And Mr. Tusa and I are actively monitoring the Department of Revenue's agreements that it has entered into with Airbnb as a specific example of an entity that they are able to collect bed tax from, whereas local clerks around the state who are not working through DOR are not able to collect through without engaging in separate litigation. So those are a number of issues we're monitoring. We know that's been something that with recent changes around us has become a topic of discussion about who should work with DOR, who should not. We just want to let you know that's something that is on our list of items, but we think it's prudent to let the Auditor General finish their current evaluation of what we do and how the clerk does, so the council has a full picture of what we'd be looking at moving forward. But that's out there, so should any of you have those questions, Jay or I'll be glad to address those or talk to you with them, but that's one reason why we've not brought up that for a greater discussion at this point, and why we don't want to get into too much detail about some of those issues until that we hate to use the word investigation, but I guess it is something between an investigation and an audit based on our letter. So if you have any questions, please, we'll be glad to talk to you or answer what we can at this point.
In the meantime, though, we are paying what the study found or recommended to the county.
That is correct, both to administration for the indirect cost of administration for parts of the Tourism Promotion Agency of the TDC and to the clerk for their collection of the tourist development tax, two separate buckets.
And is it true that won't be adjusted until some finding is reached?
At this point, it has not been. Obviously, one thing the council will have to always do each year, whether a finding is reached or not, is make a decision how you budget for that. And that's where this has always come up, is in the budget process. We'll be having a strategic planning session coming forward as we propose our budget. Historically, that's been where this issue's come up, is what we think we should be able to budget versus what we should not. One of the proposals that has repeatedly been made has been to budget a lower number that will be directly paid, with an understanding that we would hold money into reserves to pay the difference should actual additional costs be incurred. That was put on the back burner a year ago because we hoped to have a response. Here we are a year later with no response. Should the council wish to revisit it, it is within your rights.
I'd like to revisit it.
That would make sense and kind of put this controversy to bed potentially.
One way or the other.
We're paying for the use.
So we certainly can bring that back up, and that would be something that will come up during our strategic planning and budgeting sessions.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
good time for it.
Great. And just not on the list, and Carly touched on it earlier in her presentation about the visitor center and the declining numbers. And we are looking at those numbers and seeing how can we promote visitor information services beyond the visitor center. And so more than likely in the next meeting or two, we'll be bringing you some ideas back. We'll probably go to marketing committee and share some ideas with them. We're just flushing out a few ideas right now. Maybe it's a roving visitor center that drives around town and goes to different places, events, beach accesses, and kind of gets the information out that way. So just some different things, us going to maybe participate a little bit with Visit Florida and some of their visitor information centers. So just some different ideas there. We just kind of been brainstorming a little bit over the past month or two, just like, okay, we need to do something to really get the word out beyond our visitor center. And maybe it's a secondary visitor center. I mean, just throwing ideas out there. And then if that is the case, then what does that look like? Where are they located? How much does it cost to facilitate that? So those are just kind of some things we're looking at. But I think we need to kind of think in some different terms now than just, one brick and mortar location. Right. That's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Yeah,
So-
they're probably going to the restroom before they leave now instead of stopping there in the traffic or the lineup of traffic anyway.
Right. So any questions for me on those items or anything else? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, any council comments? Anything you want to bring up, address?
So I'm glad I'm here.
We're glad you're here
Glad to be
too.
back.
Glad to be back. Well, let me just say a couple things. I want to thank the new board members for stepping up, and a recommendation would be I would get with the directors and meet with them and kind of get caught up with a lot. They have a lot of stuff going on, as you can probably see, and it really give you a big picture of what's happening. Which brings me to Jay and his team. I want to say thank you. You hit the ground running, and I told him to get about 3 pairs of tennis shoes, and I think he's on his 3rd pair already. He's worn out the other 2. So thanks, Jay. You're doing a great job, and the team is transitioning quite a bit. I mean, you're getting more employees for the organization because we're trying to fine-tune the necessities that make these people come back. The tourists are coming back, and because we do treat them and they do see the things that we do to make it better for them.
Yeah.
And so the team has been they've been stepping up. When they're short, they work twice as hard. So
I will definitely echo that. I mean, the team has been amazing because we have been short-staffed and have just done a tremendous job. So I appreciate you pointing that out, and I'll just say thank you to the staff that's here and then also back at the office holding down the fort.
Yep, yeah, we noticed that, so I just want to let y'all know.
Yeah.
And again, thanks, Jason, for your service, and any of the military or veterans that are in here, thank you very much, and we appreciate you. With that being said, I'm done. Anybody else? We'll motion to adjourn. Oh, no, we got public comment. Anybody want to make a statement? No? We're good? Mr. Bagby? All right. In that case, motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. 11 o'clock. Hallelujah.
That would be the,
Good job. Good to meet you. Yeah. What do you get?
Right?
Yeah, fun.
So it's not seasoned quite yet.
We told you today, April and Christina would be good. So Jay, give it Jay and Christina. Jason, Christina,
Have a good one.
Nice to meet you, treasurer. Just, look at because I had a conversation with the commissioner of police we have a treasurer, we have a director, I call it It's really that simple, but if you don't follow the procedure,
I'll get to know these guys. I'll ask lots of questions.
Welcome aboard, sir.
So I just get with Jason and Christine. Over there on the side. Okay. She's the one that kind of pays the bills. She set up everything. You go by probably once a week, once every other week.
Jason would be like the director of
He's the director of administration. Big tall guy in the military. That's our director of administration, and Christine is the one that backs him up.
Got it. And TJ, she's paid employee or she volunteer?
She's new. She just came on, and she takes John. She works for us. She's director of sales.
But she's an employee or a volunteer? Employee. She's part of the team.
She's part of the team. Yeah, we got a lot of contractors too, but
yeah,
keeps us really.